Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here, doing my review for the end of the Akuta arc for Boruto. Of course, I've been super far behind after I did like those last two episodes like over a month ago. I just hadn't bothered to check out any more of the episodes, so today I was like, I'm gonna sit down, I'm just gonna shoot through a bunch of episodes. Fortunately, I ended up doing it like just, like I guess like 2 weeks within the time span of them actually ending the arc because we had the most recent episode come up today. And it's, we've officially ended the arc, so we're going into whatever the filler episode is going to be with the whole parent-child day thing. But I was happy. I went through it. I was like, all right, I can go through. I didn't want to bother doing every single episode with them all being so late anyway, so I was like, I'll just do like a decent review of the last 6 or so episodes, because I think it was 85 up to 92. So going through all those episodes, I just shot through them all today. I was like, I'm just going to watch the rest of this arc and see what I think about it. And all in all, I thought it was a decent arc. At least the ending I really enjoyed more than what we got like from the beginning of this arc, where it was like, all right, well, what's this big mystery? And it was kind of just the normal thing where nothing seemed like super important. That's kind of the, I don't know, infinite curse of this series. I don't know. It's just like nothing really feels like that crucial. This ultimately did end up having an impact, considering they did end up killing off Inoki. So I was like, okay, it at least has some relevance to the series as a whole, because that's a character that we knew from Shippuden and him being in the Great War. So it had some importance without a doubt. But ultimately, it was an okay arc. I'd say the ending was much better than the beginning of it. I'd say honestly, once they got to the village, I'd say the arc actually picked up. I think that's where things like really started to kick off, and it was just like, all right, this is more entertaining than everything we got before, where it's like this mystery of what's going on. They go to, Mitsuki's house, and they try to figure things out. He's got this really weird picture of Boruto, just Boruto smiling, which at the end of this arc, they have it where, they show like all the other kids have pictures with Mitsuki now too. And Boruto's picture moved from the desk right to the bed, and I was like, that's just super funny. But, going through the arc, by the time they get to the village, and then we have, the Inoshika trio with them, it was just more entertaining. So everything in the village just got better. Like I'd say once Ku was officially announced, that's when things like kind of just went to the next level for this arc, which admittedly ultimately comes down to like the last 7 or so episodes. But still, it was entertaining to watch, especially watching them all together. Definitely entertaining, because I started off with them being inside of like the crazy area where they couldn't escape unless they found the Heartstone, and so that's where we get reintroduced to one of the characters from the Chunin exam, and he ends up being the reason for them escaping. And I was like, oh well, that kind of sucks, because I wanted Boruto to get a little bit more development as a character, but ultimately it was like, well, this random kid showed up, and then Boruto helped him, and that's how they end up escaping, which I thought was interesting, because it seemed like it just led them to a specific path, and I was like, well, that seems weird. Like, why wouldn't Inoki know the exact path? Like, he made it seem like it was legitimately based on magic or, the jutsu or whatever. And I'm like, well, that just seems like they could have just found that if they looked hard enough, because all they did was just walk down obviously a certain path, and then, like, they escaped. But I assume it's kind of a combination of the two things. But either way, they helped the kid out. He ends up kind of making his return later in the arc, where he ends up actually helping Inoki get to the final battle. But it was okay. Once they escaped that, once again, it picked up. Shikadai does his thing where he escapes. He tells his dad what's going on. Shikamaru informs Naruto, and they're like, we're headed off to the village. I was hoping that we would get to see, of course, Naruto fight or somebody else fight. Sadly, that doesn't end up happening. Everybody gets there after the big battle is over. But on the plus side, the battles were actually pretty fun. Boruto fighting the one dude who ended up dying. Like, I don't remember anyone's name except for Ku, and I want to say it's like Sekiai or Sekeki, something like that, who's the guy who's like Mitsuki's friend. But Boruto fighting the dude with the crazy, the red hair, that I thought was a really good fight. And then, Chocho and Sadara end up coming in, so that was pretty fun to watch. And I love that battle because it reminded me of Kimimaro from the original series, where technically the only reason Boruto lived is because the character used up too much power, and basically his body failed on him like at the last second when he was about to win. So I love that scene because they were about to lose, but he died. So it's the same as with Gaara and Rock Lee during that Kimimaro fight, which is still one of the best in the whole series. And the only reason they survived was because Kimimaro died literally at like the last second, right before he was about to like drill through Gaara's face. He died. So I was like, well, it's cool. It gave me some nostalgic moments. Even before that, it was just a really decent fight because I was like, I don't know how they're going to get out of this. And then Sadara realizes what's happening with the chakra. And then I was like, okay, well, screw that then. If you found out my secret, I'll just go crazy with it. And that's ultimately what got him killed because he knew that they had a strategy down. And then he just kind of canceled it out. But he ultimately sacrificed himself to use more power, so rapidly. So I was like, I like how that ended up playing out. Then we have the Inoshika Cho trio when they do their fight with the dude with the tonfas. That was pretty entertaining. Ultimately, that leads to one of like 3 emotional moments that they actually have during like these last 7 episodes, which is Kun, or yeah, I think Kun was the name for it. He ends up dying, which was to be expected. Like as soon as he came in, I mentioned in that review, I was like, yeah, this character's dying. I already know that. But they did a good job with the emotions. Obviously, all they had to do was have a character cry. But there was a pretty decent fight. I love the way that they ended up tricking the character, where he knew Shikadai's move, and so he's bashing out all the lights. And then we find out that Inojin actually had had one of the lights covered with birds, and I was like, well, that's a really cool tactic. And so they do that. We get to see the mind transfer jutsu, which I thought was cool. The one thing that annoyed me with that was, the whole big deal with the ending of this arc was them going through the process of like, oh, these guys are alive, they have wills, they have spirits, and that whole thing. And that was fine. I thought it was very entertaining to watch that develop, and Inoki realizes that when it's like, why did that guy listen to me? And it was like, because he has his own personality and ideas. And they get through that concept with Shikadai when they beat, the enemy they're facing. And it was like, man, if I had a heart of my own, maybe I'd feel this or feel that. And that's when Shikadai was like, the mind transfer jutsu doesn't take over the mind, it takes over the heart. And I was like, that is the dumbest thing ever. Like, that doesn't make any sense at all. Like, it's literally called the mind transfer jutsu because someone's consciousness takes over someone else's body and it affects their mind. It has nothing to do with the heart. It's a mental thing. So it was just super stupid that they put that in there. And I don't know if that was a dub thing as far as, the subtitles, or if that was just actually what they wrote. But either way, it was dumb because I'm like, we literally have a physical representation of what that's like from when it was first used against Sakura when she fought Ino during the tuning exams. And the only reason she got out of that was because of like the old gimmick that they basically threw away after like season 3, of her having like the inner Sakura, like the chalk outline version of herself. And that was why she was able to escape. It was like she had a second brain in there to fight back against Ino. So then you go to this episode and it's like, it attacks the heart, not the brain. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. It's in the title. It's the mind transfer jutsu. So it was so stupid that they did that when they easily could have just been like, the only way you're able to break free is because your mind is so strong, or it's an individual's mind or something like that. I don't know, but they could have just gone, just put like an extra sentence in there to just say your mind is so strong because of the will that you have in your heart or something like that, instead of just changing the jutsu and being like, it has nothing to do with your brain, it attacks your heart. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, it's just dumb. Because I feel like it would be the exact same concept if they went with the brain element, because they were like, well, I don't think it would even work on that character, but it does. And it was like, okay, well, that, like, just go with the brain element instead of the heart element, and it still works either way, because the whole point was just to be like, you have spirit and will. It doesn't have to be like the physical element of having a heart. So I was just like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, why'd they like change the jutsu? It was just such a weird thing to me. But the fight was still cool. They have the emotional moment after that. Keeping it going. They've knocked off 2 of the characters. Mitsuki has his moment with his buddy where, they go further into the element of him having emotions where he's like, now that they're gone, I feel this pain right here. And of course, it's where his heart would be. And so they go through that process. Then we get some more action. We have Sadara and Boruto getting possessed by like the lolly, puppet girl. So that I thought was pretty entertaining. I love the ending to that, where the only reason they escaped was because Sadara was able to use the Sharingan in the reflection of the katana coming at her face, and so that's how she broke herself out of it, and then she got Boruto out of it. So I was like, well, that's kind of a cool way to do that. And so, they keep going through the process. It's like, okay, well, we finally have our first heart. They take it to Ku, and that's when everyone realizes Mitsuki was betraying them the whole time. He was trying to figure out who the mastermind was. For plot reasons, he decides to put his hand through Ku's chest where his heart would be, instead of just hitting him right in the head. It would have totally killed him. But, like I said, plot stuff. So he hits him in the chest, and so he's able to live from that. after falling down the stairs. So then he goes to get help, and that's when they go through the battle again. So Mitsuki has to fight the guy who considered him a close friend. I love that episode. I thought the fight between them was really good because that character, Sekiai, or however you pronounce his name, because I'm pretty sure I'm doing it wrong. His character was the best one out of all the Akuta characters because even as a fabrication, he was the one we got the most in depth with because he was the one always talking to Mitsuki. So he was the one like, is this what it's like to be sleepy or bored? What are dreams like? What is happiness like? What is laughing and stuff like that? So he's the one we got to learn the most about, and he was, I would say, the closest to even being human. As where the other characters, the other two guys basically did nothing. They just fought. The closest they came to was being mad. They were told to do something they didn't want to do. And then the girl, she just wanted to collect things to feel more human, and that was really it. So for that specific character, he had like way more, depth compared to to the rest of them. So it was cool to see him fight against Mitsuki, and he was upset and stuff like that. So I thought that went really well. And then Boruto and Sadara having to go up against the Lolly Girl again. I thought that was fun because we get to see Garaga come back. We get to see her turn the Akuta into like this giant golem. We get to see Boruto use the Rasengan, which he used like once or twice this whole arc because I was getting really annoyed when he was going through all these fights. And I'm like, why isn't he using the Rasengan? Like, I knew he couldn't do it in the place where they had to find the Heartstone because they couldn't use chakra. So I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. They wouldn't be able to do that sort of thing. So that's fine. But then he goes through his first big battle after that when he's fighting by himself. And then even when Chocho and Sadara come in, he still doesn't do it. And it was just like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, all he was doing was the Shadow Clone Jutsu for like all the fights. Like, we saw him do like the Boruto stream move honestly once. I guess technically he probably did it more than once because every time they did the smoke with the Shadow Clones were shooting through the smoke. So he was probably doing it then. But it was like, we saw him do that once. We saw him use the actual lightning chakra nature once, I think, when he had it like on a kunai, he like had it with lightning. And that was legitimately it. And I was like, all he's doing is the Shadow Clone Jutsu over and over and over again. And that was it. And like, there was no extra. So like, the fights were still fun. But that was the thing that kept bugging me with his character. I'm like, he has the Rasengan. It doesn't take up that much chakra from him anyway. So it's not like that's his final move where he's like, man, all I can do is like, I can only do this once. It's not like, how Kakashi used to be with the lightning blade. It's like, no, he can just whip those things out like it's no big deal. He can at least do a couple. And it's like, he literally did nothing. It was just the Shadow Clones over and over again. And we never saw him like attempt it or miss it or just anything until we finally got to that very last fight with him. And he uses it to like smash the face of the golem, and then that helps Garaga like crush it. And I was like, man, all these other fights, like, what the heck has been going on? Like, he hasn't been trying to use this thing. Like, the whole point of the move is that he can throw it, and it's invisible, and people don't know what to, to anticipate from it. And that's kind of the highlight of that move, where it's like, you can use that in so many different circumstances, and the character will just think the move failed. And obviously, they can't do that over and over again, where every single person's like, oh, he failed, he didn't do the move, and then it hits him, so that would get annoying. But we've only seen that happen, honestly, I think once. They did it from, the movie arc, and that was legitimately it. So I was like, they can do that. They can do it one more time. Or, just not have him make it invisible so it's more powerful when he keeps it visible the whole time or something. And he just does it once, and he keeps it visible, when he's smashed in the face. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And that was pretty much it. We saw him do it then. And then, of course, we do see him use it against Ku at the very end. And, or maybe that was the time he kept it visible. It may have gone invisible when he did it against the golem. But it was like, we saw him do it twice, and that was in I don't know if that was supposed to make it, like, extra special. But it's like, it's the Rasengan. It's not like it's a brand new technique. It's a move that he got from his dad. So it's like, it's not like seeing it is like, whoa, it's this special new technique. It's like, it's old news at this point. Like, they might as well use it up because it's just a new version of it. So it's just like, all right, it's not like we need to keep it hidden because it's this epic thing to see every once in a while. It's like, it's just the Rasengan. It's even less to see if he actually throws it because it becomes invisible. It's like, it's literally nothing to see. So I was just kind of confused why they kind of held it off like it was this insanely epic thing, where I felt like he could have used it more than like twice as like just the last technique, which normally, yeah, it's kind of used as the final blow, but it was like it just wasn't even used during the one fight where he's with Chocho and Sadara. It was like they clearly went through a giant fight, but they just didn't show it there. And I was like, I feel like that was the perfect opportunity because they needed a big move to take down this really tough character. and it wasn't used there. It should have been used in like all three fights if it was only used once. And I was like, huh, it just seems weird that it wasn't utilized more. I felt at least, but still enjoyed the action sequences. Sadara I thought was awesome in all of them. I just like Sadara way more than Boruto anyway. Like I like hand-to-hand combat, so she always goes in, fist first because she's like punching through everything, and she's using the shining gun. We see her use like the lightning ball technique against the lollipuppet girl, which I thought was a cool scene, and she just like destroys her and then like knocks her off the little rock she was standing on, and then after Garuda crushes the golem, a giant chunk just crushes her, and I was like, oh well, there's another character down. So they go through. Mitsuki has this fight, which was good, and had some deep emotion there. Then of course we get like the final fight against Ku after he gets his heart and he kills the scientist, who I thought was going to have a much bigger role. I thought once they did the reveal that he was the one that came to Inoki to kind of start things up, I thought he was going to be some sort of villain, and then it turned out he wasn't, and he just gets killed. So I was like, huh. Also, his body is stolen, so that's like some other mystery for later down the line in the series. But final fight I thought was pretty fun. Them going through trying to survive. We get to see Mitsuki use Sage mode for like just a little bit. Unfortunately he still wasn't strong enough, but that was still pretty sweet. Just to see him use that a little bit, I thought was pretty entertaining. So I was like, well, that's pretty awesome. But he gets knocked out of it pretty quick, and then they go through the fight and everything. Boruto hits him with the Rasengan. At the end, he's still powerful enough. He's gonna like wipe them out, and he finds him. And Inoki ends up sacrificing himself, and he does like a giant dismantling jutsu, and it was super cool. Like when it actually happens, and he like wipes him away, and like he takes out the like half of the building, and they just show it from the rest of the village, and it's just like this perfect chunk is taken out of the entire building. And I always thought that looked super cool because it just takes it out like a perfect square. So giant piece of the building is just wiped out, and then Inoki of course ends up dying. So it's like, well, that's a pretty emotional moment. They have the five Kage go to the funeral. They have Boruto cry, basically in the lake when he sees like a stone, and it reminds him of the Heartstone. So it's like, well, that's pretty cool. They once again did some good emotional elements there. The kids are seemingly going to be stripped of their rank as Genin, but then that's kind of revoked afterwards because it's like they're totally heroes without a doubt. So it's like, publicly, like, you guys did some bad stuff, but ultimately you legitimately saved like the Stone Village and probably a bunch of other villages as well. So ultimately everything ends up working out for them, and everything's all good. But the arc was decent, especially these last couple episodes. Getting the ending is always more entertaining than the beginning, especially with this arc, because like I said, them at the village, I would say, was truly the beginning of like all the really epic stuff. Like they had that cool fight when they like first encountered Mitsuki at the very end. The stuff with the snake was interesting, but I didn't really care that much for it. But yeah, once they got to the Stone Village, it was like, okay, all this stuff is pretty sweet. There was some simple stuff like the first episode when they actually get there and they're just walking around and like they go eat food and stuff like that. It was whatever. But after a while, it starts to pick up. Like once Ku is officially revealed and he's Inoki's son or whatever, I was like, okay, now things are getting really good. Like we see the main villain officially. They're in the village. Everything's getting crazy, and it just picks up from there. So I'd say the last like 10 episodes or so were without a doubt the best parts of this arc, because the beginning of them just going through and then finding the snake and then getting to the village again, some stuff was cool, but for the most part it was just like, I just want to know why Mitsuki left. Like, is he really bad? Is he really good? And it just felt like it dragged on. Like there's a lot of elements that led to the ending, like the Gattaca stuff. That was like 3 or 4 episodes, and I was like, I kind of wish none of that was there. Like I would have been fine if they just had a totally different thing that helped them go through and escape, but they needed someone to, talk to the snake. So, they threw in like an extra 3 or 4 episodes, and it was just like, cool, interesting. But ultimately it was just like, whatever. And in the end, Gattaca is gone to match up with whatever they aren't doing in the manga, I guess, and that's why he disappears at the end. But yeah, still decent. They have the emotional stuff, like I said, with Inoki passing away. The scene with Inojin, the stuff with Mitsuki and his buddy, and how he wanted to be human, and how he hurt for his friends and stuff like that. So they definitely did a good job there. And Mitsuki realizing his will and how he wants to protect the people that he cares about, which is not just Boruto now, but it's like everyone, all the other teams, the kids in the village. So it was cool. It was definitely entertaining. And now we're going into whatever the next arc is going to end up being. The next episode, or the most recent one, I guess, is just like straight filler crap with the parent-child thing. So could be entertaining. Naruto's in it, so that's something. It seems to focus on Naruto and Himawari, so I feel like that'll at least be new content. It'll at least be entertaining. It's not Naruto and Boruto, which admittedly I don't think would be too bad since we've gotten past the movie arc. Now that Boruto is like cool with his dad, I probably wouldn't mind seeing that too much. But I'd much rather see it focus on Himawari, so I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, the arc I thought ended fairly well. They had some surprising emotional elements in there. The action I do think was actually pretty cool in the fights that they had. So I thought they did some really good work with that. But all in all, decent arc. It's just the unfortunate curse of Boruto is like nothing really nothing feels super special. I mean, none of it's really going anywhere because it's all kind of just leading up to eventually getting to wherever the manga is. So nothing, and like I said, I haven't read the manga still, so I don't know if any of this stuff is even in there. I don't know how far it goes, or once they do the Boruto movie arc, where it skips to in the future or anything like that. But every single thing, maybe I should just read the manga so I know officially if some of this stuff is in there. But everything I watch just feels like more fillers because nothing huge really happens. They killed off Inoki, so this arc I could see at least being in the manga because they killed off a character from the last series. So I was like, that's probably in there. But everything just feels so simple, and nothing seems like, okay, here's a really lasting effect. They put some stuff in there that's definitely meant to last, like the fact that the scientist's body like vanished. Inoki obviously dying is going to impact the characters down the line. The team reforming, Mitsuki realizing exactly what he wants to do, and Team 7 coming back together. So it's stuff that, without a doubt, does technically impact the series. But at this point, it just feels like it was just another arc, and it was an arc that seemed like it went on longer than it really needed to. Like, if you cut a bunch of stuff from the beginning of this and shorten it, excuse me, I would say that it would be a much better, much more entertaining arc to watch as a whole compared to, I'd say it probably was 20 episodes for this arc. It was pretty much the whole season. And half of it was like the beginning mystery of it, and it's just the kids traveling to different locations. And like I said, the stuff with the snake, I was like, okay, they needed to do that, but also it just felt like it was so pointless when you kind of boil it all down. Garaga doesn't stay with Boruto. Maybe he appears in the manga, and that's why they did that to begin with, to just show that origin or whatever. But like they go there, and it's like they could have, if they just cut all of that and it was just one episode, and it was like they did this thing, the snake tells them like, oh, this is Mitsuki's will, and it's like, what does that mean? And then they just keep going. It would have been, it just would have helped. I personally feel like there's just a lot of questioning in the beginning with zero answers, and I was just like, not enough is happening for me to be entertained. I just kind of want the answer. Like, that's how it felt. It felt like it was going so slow I wasn't entertained enough to forget that I had the giant question of, what's Mitsuki's goal? What's these characters' goals? And it took forever to find out, and it was just like, okay, it made sense what the goal was at the end with Inoki wanting to do something good and it goes bad. And I like that idea, the road to hell being paved with good intentions. But it just took so long to get to all the stuff that I was finally looking forward to. And it was like, cool, all that stuff was good, and then everything before that was just kind of like, just meh for the show. And that was really the main reason that I was so far behind forever on the reviews. It was just like, I just don't care. Like, none of it feels like it has any true weight like it did, it all feels like filler. Which it probably is, or technically it can't be filler because they're making brand new canon, so technically it's not filler. But yeah, that's just how it's been. But the arc is over. We're going into whatever the next stage of the series is going to end up being. I am looking forward to the next episode because Himawari seems to be a focus, so I'm excited for that. But hopefully the next arc is going to be more entertaining. And if it's going to be the same level of entertainment, at least shortened. Because I think, like I said, honestly, if they chopped off a bunch of the stuff from the beginning of this season, or, this arc, I think this arc would have been much better. Like, because once they get to the village, I feel like it really picks up. And that's like 10 full episodes. Even if some of them are slower, I still feel like all those episodes are at least fairly decent. And then before that, it's like just so much traveling and just waiting for them to get to the next step of questions. Admittedly, that's kind of what this whole arc was like. It was like just getting to the next step of, what does that mean? That's kind of what they did this whole arc until it finally got to the point where it was like, here's all the answers, and now it's just entertainment. We know everything that we want to know. We get to see how the characters react to that and how they go about the situation. But for half of it, it was just, we don't even know how many questions we need to ask. We don't know any of the answers. We don't really know anything about the characters still. And it was just slowly being revealed. and the other stuff that wasn't, that was happening around the revelations wasn't 100% entertaining to me. But like I said, we're moving on. Of course, would love to know what you guys thought about this arc, the last couple episodes, the arc as a whole, them killing off Inoki. I would love to know what you guys thought about that. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts about this arc, your least favorite parts about him, where you want us to go going forward, whether you wanted to just skip to right where the manga is, or at least, getting to the actual, meat of the manga. I doubt that'll happen because they need to just need to keep pumping out episodes. So I still think that's a long time away. But we'd love to know what you guys thought about this arc, what you want to see going forward. So good, bad, everything in between for Boruto. We'd love to know what you guys think. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.